Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Carey Hanna, and he is going to be talking to us today on making wise decisions about retirement planning. Mac, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic with you and also talk with you because I see from your bio you have a combined 40 years in banking and insurance, so I'm sure you have quite the experience to draw from some of the advice you give clients. So give us a little bit of your background and what led you to the banking and insurance industry so many years ago.
Well, I started out in banking, and I became an internal auditor, and like a lot of banks, they give you these wonderful titles, but they don't really like to pay you a whole lot of money. And that's when I left and really went to work with Prudential. And I thought everybody at that time needed to have a piece of the rock. And I came to realize that piece of the rock, you might drop it on your toe because there were some other companies out there that were really very competitive. And I was a strong believer in dividend-paying companies. And I stayed that way, and I ended up in a situation where I'd always wanted to coach. And I had an opportunity to go into the school system and kind of put the insurance and financial services business on the back burner. But that didn't do a whole lot better than banking. And so I ended up keeping my insurance licenses and health insurance, group insurance, some annuities at the time, whole life, dividend paying, that type of thing. And I had an opportunity finally in 1978 to go back full time with New England Mutual Life. And I was still teaching. And as I would teach economics, I had a lot of kids bringing their parents' life insurance policies to my class. And I realized what a diverse group of policies were out there. And for some, there was no rhyme or reason why they had a particular policy, other than the fact that it was a life policy or they were paying by the week or something of that particular nature. And I began to take a much deeper interest in life insurance especially. And I had some adverse reactions at times, but I remember one story in which I was in a mobile home of all things, and guy says, well, I just don't have any money to pay for life insurance. I said, well, do you mind if I look into your refrigerator? And I found 2 cases of beer in there. I said, I think I found the problem.
Interesting.
And, of course, he invited me to leave, which I did, but his wife was smiling. So
Very
yeah,
interesting.
I've had some good times with it. And, of course, I have a lot of friends on Facebook, acquaintances, but most of them are young people whom I taught in school. I love hearing their successes and their failures, and from time to time, lifting and encouraging them. And I got to tell you, I have paid many a death claim, and I discovered a long time ago that I was the only one coming with a check. There were people looking for bills.
Yeah.
There were to be paid, mortgages to be paid, and I was able to put money in their hands. I remember one death claim. It was so funny. I carried my wife and my baby son up to Detroit, Michigan. We wanted to take a little vacation anyway, and I had a $150,000 check, and I knew the guy and his wife were not going to be home until 2 months after that. And I just didn't want the check sitting around. And they asked me, says, you would drive all the way to Detroit? to bring us that check. And I says, well, I'm on my way. But it was really an interesting experience. I got a ticket from a highway patrolman outside of Toledo, and I was sitting in the back seat, and I said, I need to ask you a question. I said, the cars on the right of me were going a lot faster than I was, but you pulled me. I says, can I ask you why? He says, white BMW, South Carolina plates. I knew you weren't going to give me a hard time.
Oh, no. Great. So now I win because I'm a nice guy.
And so, yeah, I've been in it over 45 years now. And it's been a wonderful experience. I know that I've been able to help a lot of people, a lot of families, even with the loan values. I had one man that owed a lot of property taxes into Aiken. He said, I don't have the money to pay these taxes. And I said, sure you do. He says, where is that? I said, it's sitting inside that contract that I sold you years ago. And he was able to borrow the money at 5% interest from himself. And I really enjoyed telling that story. And his daughter remembers it today.
It's really interesting. Just in that brief introduction, it made me think of a couple things. There's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And what you described with a couple of those scenarios with how you treated people in their time of need, like delivering death benefits personally, or helping them find access to money at low interest rate, which was right under their fingertips. They just didn't know where to find it. That's a service that a lot of people are not used to receiving because of the society we're in now of it's so fast paced and just next, let's move on. So talk a little bit about your approach to taking kind of throttling back and taking time to get to know people and developing those relationships.
Well, when I started out with Prudential, it was more knocking on doors. My staff manager, who also was my neighbor, said he loved finding out who was behind the door. And to me, that was very inefficient. And then they wanted me to do 50 calls a day, and I found that I didn't really like doing that. And the probability is that you're going to make 10 calls and maybe get 3 interviews, and one person is probably going to buy. And I found out that's true in a lot of different things. But more than anything else, I began working by referred lead so that the people knew who I was and what I had done. And I can remember I sold more insurance one year in Alpharetta, Georgia, and I sold in the whole state of South Carolina. And that was because of the group of people that I trusted. They trusted me, and they've been clients of mine for over 30 years.
Wow.
And it just goes from there. And now it's their children and their children's children. And I feel very comfortable operating in that situation. I've discovered a long time ago, I've never been really a dishonest person, but I never really tried to figure out what I was going to make on any sale. I was trying to do the very best thing for them. And I represented a lot of companies, and I was licensed in several states. And it was the type of thing that they knew that I was going to do the very best thing that I could for them.
Yeah.
And that has helped me and kept me in this business.
Have you ever heard Zig Ziglar speak way back in the day when he was still living?
Yes, I have.
One of the things he's known for saying, or people attribute to him, is something to the effect of, when you help people get what they want in life, you end up getting what you want. And that's exactly what you just said. You don't look at the financial instrument that you're looking to provide to the client as dollar signs, and let me calculate what I'm going to get out of this, and so I can sell them the most or whatever. You're looking at their situation going, here's what you guys need. And then papers are signed and you go, well, let's see what I made, because that is what builds long-term relationships. And I think that you don't even need to say that or articulate that. People just sense that and can tell that's your approach in how you deal with them.
Well, it always has been. And it served me well, not only in this, but in other things, is trying to treat everybody as humbly as I can and as fair as I can. And really, it's been frustrating at times because of the ups and downs of this type of business, but it's given me a lot of joy.
Yeah. I understand from your bio that you went down the road of being an Eagle Scout. So talk a little bit about some of those lessons that you learned then that even you hold today.
Well, let me say this, and my favorite uncle was my scoutmaster. And I had become really a merit badge hound because my first cousin was an Eagle Scout, and I wanted to be like him. And then I wasn't going to have my uncle be ashamed of me. He was a Silver Beaver and that type of thing. And I worked hard at it. And I became one of the youngest Eagle Scouts ever at that particular time. And it served me to the point that I say this humbly because I can't figure it out. But back in 1958, I was what they call a member of the Redcoats of 58. There were 12 outstanding Eagle Scouts who were selected to go to Washington, D.C. To give a report to the nation and make presentations to the president and other people. And I was chosen to represent South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida as one of those 12. And that meant a lot to me. It really and truly did. And it put me in a category that I always had to watch what I do, but I got to tell you, I stumbled along the way. I mean, I'm like Big Daddy Weave or whatever on the modern Christian music. I've been redeemed.
That's right. I know some Big Daddy Weave.
And I have never, ever been let go. And you know what I'm talking about. And he's always been there for me, and he's always bailed me out, and he's always helped me. And I have an abiding faith in that.
You know, I think that that's such a huge piece of when you work with a company or a person, because guess what? Mac Hanna is a person behind whatever company that you're placing financial products in. But first and foremost, you're working with a person, a man that cares and loves to provide value. And so when you hear that Mac Hanna goes, you know what, let me tell you about I've heard this word twice now from you already, mistakes, or it's frustrating because, well, I really don't want to work with someone that's not had a stumble or two and learned from it. I want to know that, you know what, life's been a little bit hard, but I've got the solution behind it. And it might be a financial solution. It might be a spiritual solution. It's things you've learned along the way, and now you're passing them on to people. So I know you do a lot of work in your community and church. And like you've just mentioned, talk a little bit about how that impacts your business and how you interact in your local community.
Well, I can go back to scouting days on that. And you try to do something for somebody on a daily basis. And sometimes a smile can turn a person's day completely around. Opening a door still, common courtesy, that type of thing. I've had a lot of honors given to me through the years. And don't ask me why. I really hadn't been able to figure that out, other than the fact that people say thank you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm able to make a person's day by being who I am, authentic, genuine. You know what you're getting. And I enjoy living that kind of life. I've coached a lot of people. I've volunteered, umpires, coaches, football. I can remember playing church league basketball, having a group of young men out there playing, and we lost a championship game, and the guy said, "Well, Hanna, you got beat today." I says, "Look, you've been saying these things for years, and we've lost 2 games, and we had 2 teams, and we lost to each other. Today we got outscored by you. But there's 2 young men sitting out there. One of them discovered his grandmother in the living room, dead, and he came here to play basketball. I had 2 young men on that court today, and both of them had temperatures of over 100 degrees when they came in here to play, and they played the entire game. So don't tell me about what I'm all about."
Yeah, that's some life lessons right there that was instilled in those kids, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I told a gentleman this morning, as a matter of fact, we had a difference of opinion. And I let him know that I've got sons and daughters from one end of this country to the other. And a lot of them are former students. And a lot of them have come to me because things I post on Facebook at times. I enjoy, really and truly, Fred Andre is a good friend of mine, former First Baptist pastor here in town. He's now working as an interim minister in a Methodist church. And Fred is one of my mentors, and I admit that. And I told him one time, says, working for God is really exciting. And here I am, 80 years old, and I'm still serving in my church as a lay Eucharistic minister, a lector. I read the lessons. And now I carry communion to shut-ins, that type of thing. I helped my wife when she was living in the soup kitchen. We would carry meals to new parents. We would carry them to people who were sick. And I've even done funeral services when the priests were not even able to do that. And I enjoy doing that type of thing. It took me a long time to accept this call, but I haven't. And whoever thought that Mike Hanna would be standing in a church somewhere leading morning prayer to people he didn't know, or standing in for a pastor.
Yeah.
And it's shocking to me, but that's who I am. That's a part of me. And I met with a Methodist superintendent. He said, "I just wanted to find out who's standing in my pulpit." And I looked at the superintendent. I said, "I'm sorry, sir, but it's not your pulpit."
Yeah. It's God's pulpit. Yep.
Exactly. And the pastor who needed my help asked me to do it, and she knew that I was going to give the people the truth according to the Bible, as I understood the truth.
Yep.
And she says, I had no problem with it. Well, I try to carry that over into the financial services business. I want to be of help. And if I can be of help, fine. If I can't help you, I will let you know. I will let you know. I will try my best to find a solution for you. And I found those solutions. A lot of time it's just helping a family get out of debt.
Yeah.
And show them another way. And it's amazing how that really can reduce the strain and the stress within a marriage, especially during this time.
You know, that's a huge point you bring up. We'll wrap up with that point and then ask how people can connect with you. But the big thing people need to remember is a lot of times they feel like, Mac, I just don't have enough money to whatever, invest for retirement. But many times you don't need more money. That bucket just has holes in it. So if you can figure out where money's going out through debt or even just misspending, like what you mentioned, what you found in people's fridge. Well, maybe if you cut back on this area, that area, or reduce some debt, now all of a sudden making the same amount of money, spending the same amount of time at work, You don't need 10 jobs, just reallocating your spending and debt. Now, all of a sudden, you have the cash flow to take advantage of some of these things that you would recommend to them for bettering their retirement. I think that is such a huge piece that people don't understand. And many times, if they're feeling that debt and they feel like they need to go out and get another job, well, now what does that do? That puts pressure on their stress, their time. They're getting up earlier, staying out late at another job. Their family is suffering because they're not at home. So all of these things, become connected. And if you can, from the outside looking in, if Matt Hanna can look at your situation and say, you know what, you ought to consider this and try this from his, external opinion and his caring approach, it might make all the difference in the world.
Mike, it's all in how you ask the questions and what you ask to get them to think, to determine in their own mind what their goals and objectives should be and how to solve those things. And I have discovered that in 5 to 7 years, most people can be debt-free if they've got the right financial instruments there to help them if they are alive and to preserve the family if they should not be alive.
Yes.
But you've got to do it right, and you have to be disciplined about what you do. And I have the ability to do that, thank God. It's a gift.
Yep. Well, you were mentioning students bringing into the classroom their parents' life insurance policies to look at. And from those early days of you giving honest assessments and comparisons, and then hearing what we've talked about today, what's the best way that people could reach out and connect with Matt Hanna and just kind of get to know you personally, as well as maybe have you give a second opinion at some of the financial decisions and strategies that they're looking at considering?
Well, I do have a website, and it needs to be upgraded somewhat. But there's a place there that says contact me. I also have an email address, and most of us have cell phones these days, so we don't pay long distance calls. But yeah, and they can contact me anytime. If I'm not available, then I'm going to get back to them just as quick as I possibly can if they'll leave a message. There's no need for us to really try to get in a situation where you want to spell it all out personally or something of that particular nature. We can handle this, especially since COVID came along. I'm a little more comfortable talking about these things over a telephone and then asking questions, seeing what their goals are, what their objectives are, what's their timetable. And I look at a situation. I asked a lady the other day, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if you had the market go down 50%, at what point are you going to fire me? And thank goodness, she says, you're fired already. I said, well, yeah, but you realize that in your portfolio, you don't have a safety net. And there should be an area over there as a safety net.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there are a lot of gurus out there that say, don't buy an annuity under any cost, buy term insurance, that type of thing. Well, let me tell you, they do not have a true understanding of who in the world created these annuities. They've been going on since the day of the Roman Empire. They don't realize that there are different types of annuities. And if you buy an annuity, you got to make sure you got the right one that's going to solve your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you're in the wrong product. You buy term insurance, hey, I know it's inexpensive, but it's like paying rent. If you've got a 10-year problem, then buy a 10-year term policy. But if you have a life problem, you better look at all the alternatives and look at the added factors in there. Look at the benefits that you have. And there are ways that you can do this that probably most people don't know about. Your financial advisor doesn't know it. Your CPA doesn't know it. Well, I happen to be with a group that does know it. And we share those ideas among us, and that I'm most appreciative of.
Well, Mac, what's the best cell number and website address that people can reach out and connect with you on?
Okay, the cell number is area code 803-270-9248. Now, that is the only cell phone to get me. My webpage is www.machanna.net. And just fill out the contact me form. You don't have to go anywhere beyond that. And we will get to each other. And if I'm not available, I will get to you, I promise you, within 24 hours.
Excellent.
And
well,
by
Mac,
the way, I do get telephone calls at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, no.
so I take them. I've got people I'm working with right now in the state of Texas, one out in California, and different time zones, but that's okay.
Yep.
If I can lift them and encourage them to bring them to a new way of thinking, I'm going to do it.
Excellent. Well, Mac, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a real pleasure getting to know your history and your approach to treating people the way they should be treated.
Thank you, Mike, and I'm thankful.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.